world, it's Keely and I'm back for another video. This is going to be an announcement video. The announcement being I'm taking part in a reading challenge, which is like, of course I am. But this is going to be the Read What You Own challenge, which is, I think, created by Olly from Olly, who I just started watching and I'm kind of obsessed with. And then a bunch of other co-hosts. So I will have the information linked down below. Basically, starting November 5th, the plan is just to read however many books you set or however many pages you set and not buy any books until you hit that point. I think he is doing 100 books. I believe he said another host is doing 500 books, which is crazy. I don't even own 500 books. I think 100 books is a little bit too much for this point. Basically, like, it's not like a set time period. It's really just like until you hit that point or until you hit that page count, whatever, you don't buy any books. And you can set yourself different like caveats and little thingies like that. But Olly really recommends that you don't do that and you try to just stick to whatever you say, because if you give yourself a lot of outs, then you might not meet the challenge. What I'm going to do is set this first at 25 books, which I think will be doable, especially because I'm not working right now. Thank you, shutdown. And therefore I'm not buying any books. The only caveat that I'm going to use, like, I'm going to include library books in that count because I am using my library a lot more this year. And I'm sitting at about 25% of the books that I've read for the year are from the library, which is amazing. And I want to continue to be at about 25% and potentially even higher, we'll see, but I would love to keep that. So I'm going to continue to use library books. I also think that will be a good way for me to continue to be around books. Obviously, I have a lot of books in my apartment. I have my TBR cart over here that is packed. I have this shelf behind me that is packed. I have two big shelves over here, another stack over there, one there, and then a big shelf in the hallway that's books that I share with my husband. So that's all of his like old school sci-fi fantasy books, and then our Dungeon Crawler Carl collection, all of my Tolkien books, things like that. I have over 200 books in the apartment that I've scanned into the reading app on my phone. But I am right now giving up on the idea of like formally keeping track of how many books I own versus how many are read, because I realized that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and making things into like lists and to-do lists and shit like that. And really, reading as a hobby, it's something that I really enjoy doing. It's obviously my main hobby. And I was making it too much into like tasks and work, and I want it to just be fun. I want to just experience books. So while I'm still scanning them into my app just to keep track of the books I own, I'm not paying attention to the numbers anymore. That will probably change within a couple weeks because my brain changes that frequently. But just announcing, rambling, this is my intention to take part in this reading challenge. Like I said, I'm starting with 25 books, and that's going to include physical books I own, ebooks on my Kindle, library books, which can be physical or ebook or audiobook. And then that's really it. I know my sister got me one book for Christmas because I specifically asked her to. Yesterday, I texted her and I was like, hey, so you know that thing where I'm not bringing in any money, but I still am a reader? Can you buy me this book for Christmas? And it's the sixth and final book in the Fortuna Sworn series by KJ Sutton, which right now is indie published. And I have the first 5 books paperback in like her indie published covers. Book 6, I think, comes out today or tomorrow, and I really want the physical book, like indie published version, because I'm so afraid that a big publisher is gonna snatch it up and change the covers. So as soon as I told my sister that, who is also a huge reader, she was like, oh, totally get it, let me get that for you. That is the only book that I know of that will be coming in that's not a library book. Let me go back to a previous thought. With library books, a huge part of my experience of books is being in bookstores. We live in a really cool area in Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania, where I am near a lot of independent bookstores and also like 6 Barnes & Noble. Being around physical books with other people buying and reading physical books is such a huge part of the reading experience for me, and I think for a lot of us. So I don't want to lose that. So my husband and I might still go to like cafes every once in a while. I don't want to buy any books while I'm there, but I'm going to let myself like pick them up and read, and read parts of them. But I'm also going to try to use the physical library system that is for my county, because I am within like 20 minutes of like 6 branches of my library system. I'm in the middle of a really great one. So when I want to buy books, what I think I'm going to do is go to the library and browse and pick up books to buy, but it's just going to be books that I bring home. I think that's how I can trick my brain into being like, you're bringing in books, when I'm not buying any. Okay, enough rambling. What I want to do, I don't know how long this is going to last, because I have all these projects that I start and then I tend not to follow through, but I'm going to freaking try. What I want to do is just give you the books that I'm currently reading and that are on the top of my list for right now, and then maybe once a week, because I've been posting videos every Friday and I would like to continue to do that, I will come back and tell you which ones I finished and which ones are like next up on my list. Once I hit 25 books that are read, I don't know when the government shutdown is going to end. I don't know that anyone does, but I can't go back to work until it's over. So we're going to set it at 25. And I'm kind of thinking that even when this finally ends and I can go back to work, I am going to have a lag time where I don't want to spend any of the money coming in. I just want to save it. And therefore, I will still not be buying books. Fingers crossed. That's what I'm telling myself. So let's start with the books that I'm currently reading. I am currently reading for the 3rd time The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, because I am going to finish this frickin' trilogy this year. I am absolutely determined. Now, I am farther along than that because I have it on my Kindle, so I was reading it last night, so I am farther along. Because I've read it this was my 3rd time reading it, I was falling asleep a little bit last night, and I was like, that's okay, because I've read it, I know what happens, but I just want to continue on from there. So my library has about a bajillion ebook copies of the 2nd and 3rd book, so I don't think I ever have to like put them on hold. I think they'll just be ready as soon as I'm done. So this one is going to be kind of like the main priority read. The next book that I started yesterday is this one, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I have a list in my head. Well, I have lots of lists. One of the lists that I have is one I've talked about in a couple videos, and it is this big Excel spreadsheet of all of these authors and like really well-known like classics and other works that I would like to have read to kind of fulfill this vision that I have of what a well-read person looks like for me. I don't care what other people read. You read whatever makes you happy, whatever you enjoy. Love that for you. But for me, I have this list of all of these books, and it's a huge variety of like, you know, Dickens, Tolstoy, Jane Austen, that kind of stuff, but then newer authors too, of books that I think will like stand the test of time and have been like really well acclaimed, things like that. And on this list are also science fiction and fantasy books that have been massive over the years. And I've read a handful of them. So like I've read Foundation, but I consider John Scalzi like one of the greats. So like I read a bunch of John Scalzi. What are some other ones? I don't even remember at this point. But on that list are some huge sci-fi and fantasy books that I've had on my shelf since I started BookTube. And the next 3 I'm going to show you are for that list. And so one of them being The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I have read Mistborn twice with the intent to continue on. Never have. And, which is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, like the first Mistborn trilogy. And then I've also read one of his middle grade, which is like the something librarians. I read the first book in that series. And I do enjoy his writing. I think it's fine. But I really, really want to dive into this massive series. Oh, another one I was thinking about was the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, because I had a podcast with my friends for a while where we were reading them. I read the first 4 or 5 of those, just continuing to read these huge books. So I did start this one, and I read up to part 1, and I need to just continue. I'm really enjoying it so far. I've read like 30 pages. And then the next one is going to be The Two Towers by Tolkien. I mentioned that I have read up to the part where they meet the Riders of Rohan and then have not read past that ever. So I need to finally conquer this. So these are like the major ones that I need to finish. By this one by the end of the year, this one by the end of this month, so I can read the next ones. And then the final one in this like stack is going to be Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I finally read a Dan Simmons. I just finished it last week or earlier this week, which was The Terror, and I had such high hopes for it, and it did unfortunately let me down. I have heard that Hyperion is incredible. I've literally had this book sitting on my shelf since I started my YouTube channel in 2014, and I've just moved it with us every time that we've moved. We lived in Philadelphia, and then we lived in Delaware County, which is next to Philadelphia, and then we moved to Maryland for 3 years, and then we moved back up to Pennsylvania 6 years ago. And this has come with us every time, and I haven't read it yet. So I really need to read this one. So the main priorities are going to be these two. I'm also still going to be working on this one, and I also then would like to read this one. And then the other one that's also at the top of my list for right now is the second book in the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal. My husband has been picking for me from a TBR jar that's specifically all of the series that I'm either in the middle of or want to start, and this was the next one that he picked, so I want to read this one because we're both just having a lot of fun where he picks a slip. So this will be book 3 from us doing that, and I am keeping track of all of them in my reading journal, so that's just been fun. This one is a sci-fi series. The first one was called The Calculating Stars, and it's basically where there's like, takes place in the 50s and 60s, and a huge like meteor or something hits Earth and wipes out the entire eastern seaboard of the United States, and all of the astronauts, all of the scientists are trying to figure out like, what the shit? Like, what do we do next? And the lead character, her and her husband are both, I know that she's like a scientist, I think he is too, and they're just trying to help figure out like what happened and what do we do next. And she ends up becoming more important than he does, and because it's like the 50s and 60s, a woman scientist is not taken seriously, and I remember getting so pissed off as I was reading the first one because of how she was treated, but I just really enjoyed it. So I have books 2 and 3. I can see book 3 up there. I believe a 4th book has come out in this series. I don't know if that's it or if there will be more, but I would really love to get to this one. Here's what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I said this. I'm gonna start with this stack and then come back to you guys as I'm reading through, and every time I finish a book, I will pick another one to add to my thing, so I always have like 5 books on the go. I have a spreadsheet in my reading journal where I'm gonna keep track of all of them. So starting right now, starting today, this is going to be reading 25 books at least before I purchase any more. Hopefully I can continue on. I would love to say that I've read 100 books without buying any more, but we're just gonna see how this goes. Gonna try to do baby steps because I tend to not do well with these like not buying anything, but we're gonna really try here. So if you are taking part in this challenge, please let me know. Let me know if you guys have read any really good books lately. What are you currently reading? Have you done a challenge like this before? Do you have any tips? And that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.